I was required a couple years ago to upgrade my insurance policy to include a cyber insurance, right? And I said, one, what is cyber insurance? And two, why do I need cyber insurance? It's another pretty hefty cost on our annual policy with our insurance provider. So I learned that the client that requested it, essentially, they had someone reached out to them. One of their clients reached out to them and said, "Hey, can you ship me 8 trucks to our location?" I think it was somewhere in South Florida. And they said, "Sure." And so they told them, "We need the trucks to, this year, this make, this model, some nice trucks." Like I think they're either F-150 or F-250, Lariat type thing, 4-wheel drive, extended cab, long bed. And the trucks got delivered. And all of a sudden, they send out the bill for payment of the trucks. And the payable team says to the client, "Why did you send me this? Like, we didn't order these." Well, the client, the buyer, if you will, the alleged buyer, their account got infiltrated, their email got infiltrated, and these 8 pickup trucks were sent to this random warehouse in South Florida and all stolen. So that is why we now have to pay a lot of money a year for cyber insurance. Knock on wood, I've never had a stolen car issue, but you mentioned double brokerage issue. Every day we deal with, that potential. One of the greatest parts about Super Dispatch's review system, not just SuperProtect, but with the rating system or the negative rating system, you can tap in there and say, "I'm giving this negative review because of double brokering." That it's a shipper/broker help each other out tool, and it's been great. I mean, and then of course you have all these other tools in place to vet the carrier on the front end of things, make sure they're doing things legitimately. But even with all this stuff in place, you still get the bad apples sneak through. A couple weeks ago, I had a guy at delivery. The client calls and said he won't release the car because he wants COD. We don't offer COD. It's not our payment option that Tarpon has. And I'm trying to call the carrier. I dispatched the order on and they're not picking up. So I called the delivery location back. I said, "Let me talk to the driver on site." It was a driver I'd known, and he, after doing some digging, I learned the load had actually been triple brokered. And the carrier that I brokered it to, I think skimmed like $900 off the top. We got lucky here. I was able to figure out the actual carrier because I'd been established with him for some odd years and we had a relationship, and I was able to cancel the order on that, triple broker carrier and send it direct to that carrier. But the whole double brokering issue, we've been facing it for about a decade. It seems to get worse every year. You have more bad actors showing face every year. So the Super Protect tool has been great with the monitoring, being able to check lanes to carrier services. It shows, some of the software show carrier has been inspected in the Southeast and suddenly they're asking for five different loads on the West Coast. Something is not matching. So having these tools in place is huge for a broker. Or even if a carrier is getting a load from an alleged broker, that carrier needs to have the due diligence to vet that broker and see if they're actually a broker and see how legitimate they are. Because there's no telling if they would ever get paid. Like if I didn't get that guy on the phone and figure out who he was, who knows if he would have gotten paid. And that's why he told me, he said, "Doug, I got a weird feeling in my stomach that I'm not going to get paid. And that's why I released these cars." He's like, "I was waiting for the Zelle to pop up on my phone, or I was not going to unload these cars and I was going to take off." So, it's not just a broker thing. It's also, the carriers need to make sure who they're getting a load from is a legitimate brokerage, and it has legitimate funds and has legitimate brokerage authority.
Yep. Carriers need protection too. No doubt about it. For the broader audience, SuperProtect is going to be a tool that we expose to shippers to help them ensure that the carriers that they are dispatching loads to are of a high quality from a anti-fraud perspective. And so that example that Doug gave of carrier typically works in Southeast, why all of a sudden are they requesting 50 loads in Chicago and 100 loads in Washington State? Highly unusual activity, which protects the shipper and protects the carrier, because sometimes the carrier's account has actually been compromised and they may not even know it yet. And so we want to protect both parties in that situation. Ezra, what are you seeing from a carrier perspective around how you're keeping your account secure in anything that you've seen come up in the past few years as it relates to the fraud dynamic?
Like Doug mentioned, it's something that it's ever increasing. From a carrier perspective, we run into similar issues where we had an experience a couple of months ago in another platform where our account was hacked over the weekend, like Friday night, and on Saturday morning, the bad actors tried to grab two high value units. It was a McLaren and a Range Rover. Luckily, our weekend support noticed that there was an odd transaction, and they actually tried to log it into the account and couldn't. So they ended up contacting the support of the platform. Long story short, it literally took us almost 2 days to actually resolve that issue. Luckily, they weren't able to pick up the units. And that happened a couple of times in like a 3-week period on the same platform. So we trained all of our dispatchers to not click on any link, continuously check your credentials to make sure that they haven't been hijacked. So that's really, it's a challenge. On the side of bad actors, double brokerage, I think that's an area that I think it's been historically abused because there was regulation but not enforcement. So a lot of bad actors will just grab MCs, burn them, and keep doing this over and over. I think now in the last year, we've seen that shift 180% as far as enforcement with the introduction of a lot of the camera networks, national camera networks, you know, the Genlogs, the flock cameras that really now enable law enforcement, not only in DOT, but across the country where they can see where the driver logs are saying he was versus where the unit was actually spotted. I think that's very quickly beginning to remove a lot of those bad actors. Now, like anything in technology, as quickly as we begin enforcement, there's another set of groups trying to figure out how to bypass enforcement. But I think what that is doing from a carrier perspective, it's really cementing the understanding that safety now is paramount. Because when you think about vetting tools, they're all focusing on your CSA score, like you said, where you normally move, and all that data is actually now visible. So I think that's going to help begin to improve both the carrier and the broker experience. Adversely, though, it's going to create a greater shortage of good carriers because the shady ones that a lot of questionable brokers were using will no longer be able to be insured. And now with the Montgomery decision that makes, in certain cases, the broker liable for any accident that the carrier is involved, I think we're going to see that quickly evolve and get some of those bad actors out of the game.